We're excited to be here on another episode of the Midnight Founders Podcast in studio here with Stephen Heumann. And you got to be careful with that spelling. It's Heumann, right? So that's easy to kind of get confused on. And I love what he says here. He says it's your story, but it's amplified. So he's an amazing ghostwriter, publisher, does some speaking, and recently released a book, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. He just got back from Kenya yesterday, so there may be a little jet lag that you're not going to see, but we may see it a little bit here in the studio. And we're really excited to have you here, Stephen. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, Jake. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, in your history as well, I'm seeing here a lot of, you've been on TV for 15 years or so, and, you were the chief creative officer at Quimble's. So, I mean, just lots of really cool experience in the media space, really. So let's dive in. Let's start talking about kind of what you're working on now, maybe a 30-second pitch on what you're doing and why you're so excited about it.
Yeah, so the heart of the business today is the ghostwriting and publishing. I'm an author myself. I've written a lot of fiction books, about a dozen fiction books, and then a nonfiction book about writing, about telling your story. And that's really the engine of what we do, is helping business leaders, thought leaders, founders, individuals who want to be seen as the expert in their field, or just have a story that they know is going to have impact, but they're not an author. They're not a writer, They got the story, but they can't do the rest. And so they come to me to be able to do that. And I do the writing, make sure that the book punches above its weight class and does all the things that they need it to do. And I really love it. I'm able to be creative myself in my writing. And then I'm able to take real life stories that wouldn't be told otherwise and tell them in the most powerful and impactful way humanly possible, and then see the impacts that it has on the reader and on the individual themselves. And so it's incredibly fulfilling to be a part of this.
It's kind of crazy. I'm not a creative person at all. So this is so far outside of my realm.
I would disagree with that. I have some creative streak in you, Jake. I would disagree.
Yeah. But even AJ, when I met him and we started doing this together, I learned so much about marketing, and it's crazy that there are so many different facets within marketing, and writing's the same way. What you're talking about, you can have somebody that's good at writing, but it's not the whole picture. So yeah, you just learn a lot about this creative side, and
I love it.
Dive down into one kind of rabbit hole.
I would say too, Stephen, as AJ Round's coming to you saying, hey, I want to write my story, and I don't know how to do it, and I don't know what to do. If I were to do that to you, what would be your response? How do you handle someone like that coming to you for the first time?
So the first question that I always ask is, why do they want to do it? What is the reason? Because that question is incredibly important. If they understand why they're doing it, then that will impact every page. And then we can dive in and we start going, okay, this is what it's going to look like. And this is what you need to prepare for, and all of that sort of stuff. But if they understand why they're doing it, then that really becomes the core of everything that we do. Because for the most part, when people come to me, they're like, okay, well, yeah, I want it to have impact on my business and on my personal brand and on all these things. I want to be seen as the expert. I want to be able to charge more money. I want to be able to do all of these things that a book will allow me to do. And that's fine. But most of the time, their core reason is, I want to impact the people who are going to read my story. I want to make their lives better. I want them to be able to learn from me. I want them, all of that sort of stuff. That's the real power. And so when they understand that themselves, then suddenly everything flows.
So you kind of start with the why is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because some people will be like, well, I just want to make $1 million as an author. And it's like, well, the chances of that happening are really small. The book is going to serve a whole bunch of other purposes. And yeah, you're going to sell books, and the more books you have, the more money you make, honestly. But you're not going to be able to turn it into an ecosystem until you have 4 of them. So with just one, it's going to serve a whole bunch of purposes, but it's not going to be oh, you're going to, become the be all end all. You got to understand what the expectations are and what the reality is, right? But obviously, if you want to get on the New York Times bestseller list and stuff, I got partners who can help you do that. That is a legitimate thing, but it's all pay to play. So you just got to, if you're getting into it to become famous and stuff, it's well, that's probably not the best reason to do it.
You're like, let's go back and assess.
Yeah. And for me, I'm like,
Hold
I'll
on.
cash your check either way, man. Like whatever you want, but I'm going to be really honest with them and just be like, hey, that's not the reason that we do this. Like it shouldn't be. You obviously want to have those positive impacts on yourself and on your business. That's key. You got to know where your ROI is. Like I'm not going to, getting a book ghostwritten and published is not a cheap endeavor. Like it's an investment in your business. So you got to understand what your ROI is, but you also have to know that if you have a purpose that goes beyond yourself, then it's going to be more effective. It's going to have a much greater impact on everybody because that reason, that why, is going to be a part of every page of the book. You know, that's the real power of it. And if you go into it not understanding that, then you're going to have a much less effective product.
For the audience, Stephen, that's actually really good information. What would you say is and I don't even know what I'm saying here because I, obviously have never written a book, but is there a sweet spot, like a length, or a, particular, model or pattern that you use for books that you have found is like the best practice?
Yeah. For when it comes to like the business book, which is generally what I'll kind of push my clients toward, not just a straight up biography or something like that. Biographies are fine, but they're about the person. Whereas a business book is about the reader. You want the reader to walk away with actual knowledge that is going to help them to be able to learn and grow and have a better business experience, right? And so that's a much purer book form in order to accomplish that. So with a business book, you're looking at probably about 50,000 words. That's the common length that you see when you pick up a business book. You don't want it to be too thick, and people aren't gonna. That's a long experience, and most people are like, okay, I want to be able to read this and to walk away with a good experience. And so you want to have that, and then the same thing with like the covering and stuff is that it's got to be in the right, so that the people understand exactly what it is right off the bat. Because it's not that like people will complain, oh, people today we have short attention spans and all this sort of stuff. And that's actually not true. The truth is that we are inundated all the time with data constantly. And so we've just gotten very good at discerning what we actually want, which is why for the most part, videos don't get watched beyond the first 10 seconds. It's not that we don't have attention spans. It's just that I'm not going to waste my time on something else that I just don't want. And so,
interesting.
So you've got to be able to grab them. And so it's the same thing with the cover. It has to be in this lane so that people understand exactly what it is because they want it. And they need to know that they want it. And so we'll work with clients who they'll be like, oh, I've got this cover idea, or here's the cover that I want to use. And we handle all of that stuff on our end. And I'll just tell them, I was like, well, that looks like a murder mystery. Your book is on overcoming personal trauma. No one is interested in a murder mystery that you're going after.
It's got to be on brand.
Right? Yeah. And so you've got to have all of that stuff kind of figured out. And if you do, then you'll be successful. But that's what we try and handle for everybody. Where it's like, we will take care of all of that so that you don't have to worry about it because you honestly don't know what it is that you don't know. And we'll cover all that and make sure that it happens and that everything, so that this book looks exactly the way it should look, that it's the right length, and so that the people that you want to touch with your story, you want to be impacted by, that you'll get those people.
Interesting.
Cool.
You touched on this a little bit, and this kind of goes back to the theme of the podcast, that even writing books is not an overnight success. Like in order to, get to where you want to go, sometimes it takes multiple books, and it's not something that's going to make you rich overnight. And that kind of goes to the theme of the Midnight Founders podcast, that entrepreneurship is a grind, and that it's not something, maybe from the outside people are like, oh, they wrote a book and now they're a millionaire, but it took hours and many people and probably multiple books to get there. I think I was looking through your LinkedIn profile, and a few weeks ago you wrote something about how failure is a part of entrepreneurship, and how a lot of times it's the failures that you learn the most from and are also the most compelling stories. Can you expound on that, or what led you to that kind of realization?
Well, I think it was just my own entrepreneurial journey. When I left television after 15 years and I founded Superhuman Creative,
why did you leave television after that long?
I just felt like the business wasn't progressing in the way that I kind of had felt that it should and would. And so it got to the point where I had to just accept the fact that that wasn't going to happen, and that if somebody was going to have to take a risk, it wasn't going to be the owner of the company, it needed to be me. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll found this company and I'll start building it. And we started out with just my fiction books and the video side. And I just wanted to do more personal videos. I didn't want to do big commercial productions anymore. I was like, okay, that's going to be the business. But then over the next couple of years, after the failure cycle of realizing, okay, well, learning things you just didn't know that you needed to learn or that you didn't even know existed, and failing a bunch and falling flat on your face and pivoting and all the stuff you do constantly as an entrepreneur. And then realizing, oh, this is where the real need is. Oh, and I really like this. And so this is probably the direction that I should go. And so that's where the ghostwriting and the publishing came from, was through that failure cycle. And so I learned it myself, that you've got to accept failure. You've got to go after failure, not trying to fail, but just realizing that, okay, there's so much that I just don't know, and I'm going to fail at it. And that's okay, because if I fail, then I know that doesn't work. It's kind of like when I started my fiction career, we're used to not getting critiqued very much in life. Like no one's going to tell you how badly you actually suck. Well, when you're an author, that's how it goes.
They put that on the
It's
head.
Yeah, it happens.
Maybe everyone should have that
Constantly.
experience then, just for once, just to try that.
And so if you're doing it right, then you're going through, reader groups where you're working with other authors and you're getting each other your stuff, and you're just getting beaten down with it, because you can't fix a problem that you don't know exists. And so those problems have to be pointed out. And you get to the point where you're like, okay, I can accept critique and I can accept that failure. And as you go through it in business, and you just realize that, okay, I've got to try things that are outside my comfort zone, and I'm going to fail at them, and that is just fine. That's just a part of the journey. And if I can discover where those problems are, then I can fix them. And then I can open myself up for success and for other failures. I think that the business leaders who succeed on the first try, big, are actually more likely to fail and to be destroyed by that failure later. Because you see so many of these one-hit wonders, or the individual who succeeds in their 20s and has this billion-dollar business or whatever. And generally when they try something else later, they fail at it just like everybody else does. But if you haven't had that cycle of failure, it's more likely to destroy you. Because if you think that you're just so great that no failure is going to take you down or whatever, it's like, well, yeah, then you're the one who's most likely to get wrecked by that failure, because you haven't built up the immunity to it, right? So that's kind of how I see it. Yeah.
It's interesting because at the bank, I look at this all the time, and it came from the Richest Man in Babylon book.
Love that one.
It says, you don't give, I think the quote is, you don't give a brick mason money to buy jewels. But it's like these people that are really good at one thing oftentimes think that will transfer to another industry, or like that, oh, I'm successful in this, I'm going to be successful in anything that I try. And it's funny because like a lot of times they're not. You're exactly right. Like those failures destroy them.
Yeah.
Because it like completely wrecks their like self-perception of like, I'm successful because of me, and they don't really attribute it to like what the real skill set is. Like, maybe they're really good at one thing, and that doesn't transfer to this other industry.
It's true.
So,
well, and I think that's why there's such a gap between an entrepreneur and a serial entrepreneur, right? Because it's the difference between you've done it once, maybe twice, or you've done it many, many times. And there's a lot of learning that takes place in between those two.
Yeah. And I think that if you're not pushing yourself and going through that failure cycle, that really you are setting yourself up.
I love that you call it the failure cycle. I mean, you should coin that phrase. That's
yeah,
great.
because it is. It's like, if for anyone who is in that entrepreneur space and is trying, you just have to know that you're not going to know everything, and you can't know everything. Like when I was working really heavily on my fiction books and on selling them online through Facebook, I had to learn a whole bunch of stuff, right? And sometimes what I thought would work, what I was positive would work, absolutely did not work. And I had to go through and iterate and try things. And sometimes what I thought was an absolute abject, stupid failure image that I was testing on these ads would be the one that would resonate. And so it's impossible to know. And then I learned that what worked 6 months ago is not going to work now because things shift too much and there's too many people. And so you have to have that same understanding in your entrepreneurial journey that this entire thing is about pivot. Yeah. It's about looking and saying, okay, what worked last year, it may still work this year, but there's also a good chance that it won't, because you've got to constantly be looking at that shift of how our modern world works with audience and with the needs of the business. And especially now with AI, you've got to look and see, okay, well, what is shifting and where? And that's why successful entrepreneurs are able to continue being successful, not because they just have it figured out. They just understand that, okay, well, I have to be fast and I have to be able to look and say, okay, this worked before and it's not working now. So I have to make a change. I don't have to demand that the things around me change. I have to say, okay, I am in an environment of change. And if I change with it, then I can have success. But if I stay and just kind of beat myself over the head and try and say, no, this worked before, it's going to work again, then you're just kind of, you're sloping down toward the end of your business.
Yeah. I find it really fascinating that you're kind of hitting on two important topics, right? You're saying, hey, you got to have that failure cycle, to kind of really understand what what you should do next or how to learn from it, right? But then you're also touching on the topic of this feedback loop where you have to get that feedback back, quickly. So that you can,
too.
Yeah, consistently, so you can make those changes, right? And it's funny, going back to what you said earlier, where authors, there's no better way to get feedback quicker than be an author. I had forgotten about this story, but as you're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, Miss Harris in 9th grade in South Cache Junior High. I remember she gave us this writing assignment in our writing class, and I hated it. I can't remember the topic. I think it was something about the different styles of writing. And she's like, hey, this is going to be your masterpiece. This is going to be your work of art, to write this paper. And I turned it in. I was so proud of it. And she's like, terrible. Go do it again. And I was like, what? What else do I do? And so I thought through it, read the material again, redid it. Terrible. Do it again, AJ. So the 3rd time, 4th time, 5th. I think I went back to her 9 times. And she was patient enough to say, nope, still terrible. Go back and try it again. But by the time I got done with that, I'd had enough feedback that was very specific that it was something I was proud of. And I think that's exactly what you're talking about here. And it happened to me in writing. I had forgotten all about that until you mentioned that.
Yeah, I think that we all want to be that instant success.
Right.
We want to be so good at something that it just happens right then. We don't have to work for it. But rarely is that the case. And even then, like I think about, let's talk about it in sports, right? You have those naturally talented sports player, a baseball player, for example, who just has a natural talent. Well, he is still going to lose to the person who just busted their butt to get there. Like Michael Jordan's a perfect example. He got cut from his high school basketball team. He did not have what they considered the natural talent. He was just so competitive that he was like, no, this is what I want to be, and I'm going to work harder than anyone else.
And he just outworked everyone.
And he outworked everybody and became, what some consider the greatest player of all time. It wasn't that he just naturally was like, I'm the best. It was like, no one is going to stop me from being the best. And you've got to be that way in business. You have to look and say, okay, I've got certain skills and I've got certain things that I enjoy. Where do those coincide? And then how hard am I willing to work? Because as you guys know, in entrepreneurship, it is the grind, and you've got to work hard. And sometimes you're going to wake up in the morning and go like, man, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. But then you're going to wake up in those mornings and you're going to be like, okay, it's working. I've got the freedom that I want. I'm making more money than I'd ever be able to make working for someone else. And I've learned more in this experience than I ever would have in my entire life. And so this is why we do it, right? Modern hunter and gatherer. That's what we are when it comes down to it. And every day you got to go and you got to bring that woolly mammoth down. But if you're out there and you're doing it and you're accepting failure and accept learning and realizing that with humility, you're not as good as you think you are. And things aren't always going to work out. You keep going, then you're going to be just fine.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in the description for the podcast, when we schedule people, it talks about Kobe Bryant and the story about how
That's right.
how hard he worked and how, all the time, like his teammates that would join the team would be like shocked that he was the first one in the gym and the last one to leave, and, shooting tons of free throws and just that mentality of like outworking everybody. And I think it takes both, right? It takes the skill set, harnessing those natural abilities that you have, but also that work ethic to truly be successful. And I think entrepreneurship pulls that out of you just inherently. And it's what separates good entrepreneurs, that willingness to, go through that grind and push through those really tough times. So,
Well, and also too, he didn't accept or allow for mediocrity from his other team players. And I think you have to have that element as well, where you are expecting the best of yourself. So you can't expect that from everyone else too. And if they don't cut it, then you got to move on to the next thing. To the next team.
And you have to be
team
willing
member.
to kind of say that stuff, to be like,
Right.
hey, this is the level where we play at, or this is the level where we work at. And if you're not willing to do that, then that's great. There are other opportunities and places for you to go. But you have to be able to allow people to understand what the expectations are. And most of the time they're going to rise to those expectations.
I agree.
But if you don't, and you just assume that it's understood, well, then you're setting them up for failure.
That's
because
right.
then they don't know. So yeah, I think having those standards and realizing that, okay, I'm going to hire people who have those standards, and I'm going to be very clear. Like there was a great quote, or there was something that I was at a networking group when we were talking, and somebody mentioned the fact that being clear is so much better than being clever. If you can just be
We've heard
clear,
that quite a few times
Yeah.
on the podcast, and I completely agree with that.
if you can just be clear in what you want and what you stand for, that beats clever all day long. And I've seen it in my career as an author, and I've seen it in my business as a ghostwriter, where it's like if people understand what it is that they're getting and what it costs and that sort of stuff, then that's all you need. Or if I go to convention, like I learned this at convention selling my fiction, where it was like if I just had a banner above me that said books on it, that worked so much better than some clever thing with my picture and stuff, because then people knew they would see it. It would jar them out of their like trance as they're walking through a convention, and they would realize, oh, I'm looking for books. So you would think that would be just lame, but it's like, no, being clear is really awesome. And it gets you to where you want to go, because you're basically just saying to your client, this is what I have, and it's what you want.
Yeah. I mean, I think back to probably a month or two ago, we had Tyler Mumford on the show, and he calls himself Ty the Stump Guy. Very clear. He doesn't cut down trees. He doesn't lay cement. He doesn't do landscaping. He just grinds stumps. That's it. And for that reason, because he's so clear and so specific and focused, his business has really taken off. And he's been able to leave his full-time job, and now he's expanding. And I think what you're saying is very critical and often overlooked in many businesses. I'm sure you see that when you're writing books.
I do, because we think that being clever makes us look smart. And maybe it does. I mean, I love when someone thinks that I'm clever. We all do. It's natural. You want someone to think that you're intelligent enough to say something that's clever. But if you can say something using 4 words instead of 8, that's what real cleverness is not having to overstate things. And you see it all the time when someone will be like in a job description or something, right? Like that's the classic sort of example where they're like,
The resume.
Yeah. We're all about vertical integration and with blah, and it goes through this big long thing where at the end they used a lot of words to really not say anything. And they were trying to sound clever, as opposed to just saying, you're in charge of HR. We want to make sure that we're hiring good people. This is what your job description is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. Because then people come in and they go, oh, that's the job that I'm looking for, as opposed to something big and vague, which just proves that you don't know who you're hiring. So why would I go and work for that company? Because I'm going to set myself up for failure, because I don't even know if you know what it is that you're hiring. I had a job like that when I was in my 20s, where they hired me and they didn't know what they needed. And so the job only lasted 6 weeks, because I got in there and was doing the job, and then they realized, oh, geez, we didn't even really know what it was that we needed. We thought we needed a writer. What we needed was a realtor who kind of maybe could write. And so, yeah, being clear will solve so many problems. And that's how it is with my books when I'm writing for someone, is that when we're in the interview process, and what that looks like is that, once we're moving, basically it's all interview based. So we'll have a rundown for the book, and then I'll interview them for each chapter, and I'll ask the questions, and they just get to talk. And when I'm writing it, like, I'll know, okay, he took 15 minutes to tell this story. Well, this story needs to be told in like 4. So I'm going to tell it in the fewest words possible so that it gets to the point. And that's how we're going to do it. And there's other times where it's like, okay, this story needs to be fleshed out and needs to move, and it needs to have all the words and all that sort of stuff. But you've got to be able to look and say, okay, which is going to serve the best purpose? Because a whole bunch of words does not serve generally anyone's purpose. No one wants to get to a point in a story where you're checking your watch. You guys ever been in a movie where you're checking your watch? I know I have. Someone made a massive mistake. They're doing too much because you're getting to the point where you're getting bored. I was watching with my son the last Jurassic. It was the one before the most recent one. It was one of the Jurassic World movies.
There's so many now.
There's a ton. Yeah,
hard to keep track.
And we were watching it, and about halfway through, because it didn't have great reviews, and we're watching on Netflix, so it was like, we'll watch it. About halfway through, I was like, wow, this is actually a pretty good movie. And then by the end of the movie, I was like, that was the biggest waste of my life ever. Because about 2/3 through the movie, I started checking my watch, going like, okay, how many times can they almost get eaten by dinosaurs? Like 40 times.
I mean, we're 18 movies in or whatever it is now. It's the same story.
Oh, and then that one, it just kept happening again. Every time they would walk into the bathroom and there'd be a dinosaur in the bathroom about to eat them. And I was like, how?
We did that in the first one. Wait a second.
It's like, did we need 40 different attacks by dinosaurs? It's like, you probably could have gotten away with 2. Yeah. And we would have gotten the point that it's a dangerous place to be. And so it's the same thing with a book, with a business book, is that you got to look at all that stuff. You got to look at the pacing, and you got to look, okay, am I just being clever or am I being clear? Because if you're being clear and you're using fewer words, that's the true showing of a bright mind. Yeah. Is that you don't need to overstate what it is that you're saying.
Did you always know you'd be a writer someday, Stephen? How did this come to be?
So I've always been a writer, but that's a little bit different because I grew up in a family where you couldn't make a living as a writer. It was too far out there. You needed to just get a job. If you were artistic, that was great, but you were never going to make a living at it. And so it wasn't until I got married and my wife was very supportive. She's like, no, your writing is where it's going to come from. And I still didn't believe it. And then I got the job in television as a writer and director, and it was like, okay, so I can make a living doing this. And then when I founded Superhuman in 2018, it was like, okay, let's figure this out. But then I understood fully, where it's like, no, I can make money, I can make good money, writing for myself, writing for other people, doing something that I'm good at and that I enjoy. But yeah, looking back, I always was a storyteller, always. But it took me understanding that I had to take the reins myself in order to truly make it a reality. And so I tell people that when they're an artist or a writer or something, I was like, okay, you can play within the confines. And the reason that it doesn't work out for most people isn't because they're bad at writing. Sometimes it is. But most of the time, once you get to a certain level, you're good enough. But what they do is they're trying to play within the confines of the production world, of the publication world, or of the filmmaking world. And it's again, that has a very limited spectrum of people who can actually get in. And it comes down more often than not to luck than it comes down to hard work or it comes down to your talent. But if you're willing to take the risk and bet on yourself, then you can make it happen because you're just going to become an entrepreneur. And you can create your audience. You can develop whatever, you can develop a following on YouTube. Some of the most wealthy creatives in the world right now are not people that you would ever know their name because they've developed a following on Patreon. And they have their audience who pays for their stuff. And some of them make $1 million a month. But you've never heard of them. They took control of their own creative career. And they said, this is what success looks like for me, is to be able to create my art however I want to do it and have people pay me to do it. It's not about being famous. It's not about having people tell me how great I am. It's about me creating an audience that is willing to pay. And so for anyone who is willing to do that and realize that you're going to have to learn some business, you're going to have to go through that risk and failure cycle. If you're willing to do that as a creative, you'll find success guaranteed.
Fascinating.
So you spent a good portion of your career working in the corporate world, and then you kind of went into entrepreneurship. I'm always fascinated with people that have seen both sides, because we have a lot of people on the podcast that were entrepreneurs straight out of college or straight out of high school even, and just have been entrepreneurs forever. And I think that somebody that's been in both worlds brings a different skill set and learns, sees entrepreneurship in a different light. What was the biggest shock for you going from the corporate world to being an entrepreneur?
For me, it was understanding kind of getting past the mindset of the paycheck. That the paycheck was the safety net. That every 2 weeks you were going to get a check in your bank account. And moving to the entrepreneurship of realizing, okay, that wasn't going to be the case. That you were going to have dry spells, and that you're going to have to prepare for those dry spells.
It's a little bit lumpy in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it's the feast or famine. And for most of us, that's the case. That's what it is. It's not, I mean, you want to get to the point after a decade where it's like, it's consistent enough that you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing. But for most of us, it's the feast or famine. You pull in a couple contracts at once and suddenly you're set for the next 8 months, and you do the job and you continue networking, you continue doing all that stuff. And then it gets to the point where it's like, oh, okay, well, things are a little dry. And then you have a few months of dryness where you're just like, okay, well, we're going to be a little bit leaner. You have to accept that cycle, and that's just a part of it. And it sucks sometimes, and it's not fun sometimes. But the reason that you're doing it is because you have the freedom, and that you know that you're betting on yourself. And that if you bet on yourself, you're gonna be fine. But you gotta, so that was the first thing that I learned, is that I had to pull my mindset away from the security that I thought that I had. Because in truth, if you have a job, you have a cushy job in the corporate world, yeah, you don't worry about your paycheck. You're going to get paid every time. But you could also get let go tomorrow. Like, there is no security, period. We think that there is, but you literally have no more security than an entrepreneur does. It's just that the entrepreneur has bet on themselves and has learned to hustle and to hunt and to gather and to do those sorts of things. And if you lose your job tomorrow, you don't have those skills. And so, yeah, you're going to start looking for another job. And like right now with the AI world as it is, a lot of jobs are just simply going away. And so you've got to realize that there is no security, no matter what. That security doesn't exist unless you're the owner of the company. And even then, look at history. There have been plenty of owners of the company who have gone literally overnight from being the richest people in the world to being paupers. It's happened. And so, if you can get rid of that security mindset and realize, okay, there is no security, I'm going to bet on myself, then you're going to be able to move forward in that realm. And that was the first thing I had to learn.
You mentioned AI, and that was going to be my next question, is how is AI transforming what you're doing? I mean, I know you probably hear about it all the time. But,
yeah.
But
obviously it has, because you have a lot of people who are writing books with AI. But the thing about AI content is that it is very generic. It's just generic content. And that's the key word, content. That's all it is. It's content. It adds to the noise. So many people use AI on their emails and AI on their LinkedIn posts. And so we've gotten pretty good at being able to tell when it's AI. And so then we immediately check out. And we feel, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like, okay, well, that's not worth my time to read because the person didn't take the time to actually state anything. And so with the books, I've published books for people because we take people in the entire range. So people who have not written a single word all the way through to publication, or people who have finished their book 100%, but it needs an edit and it needs to be published. And so we do everything in between. You've written part of your book, okay, we can help you get to the rest of the way. You've written your book with AI, that's cool. So we've published for people who have written their book with AI.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but I always tell people the same thing, where I'm like, okay, if I'm going to edit it for you, I'm going to point out every point where it sounds like AI, and so you're going to have about 8 instances per per page.
And then you'll rewrite those parts.
And it depends. Yeah, it depends on what they're paying for. Sometimes it'll be like, because they'll be like, well, I want it to be as cheap as humanly possible. It's like, okay, I'm just going to point it all out.
Okay.
And then you get to fix it. And then I have other people who are like, no, just fix all of it. And I'll just go through and I'll fix all of it.
Okay.
But with AI writing, you can't get more than 3 or 4 sentences before it has an AIism, before you can tell that it's
AIism. I love that.
Yeah. AI has certain writing patterns. It just does. It loves it's not about this, it's about this. It loves that phrase. Whenever I see that phrase, I'm like, okay, you used AI, because it'll say, it's not about the microphone. It's about the person behind the microphone. And AI freaking loves that sort of phrasing. Like it's
that
like
framework.
Oh my gosh, it drives me nuts. And you see it all
I'm
the
gonna be
time
watching
in
for that
LinkedIn.
now.
All the time in LinkedIn posts.
Okay.
Because it's not about the post, it's about the person writing the post. And you'll see it all the time now. It'll drive you nuts.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, you'll ruin it.
We'll never be the same.
Imagine watching a movie with me, because I see all of the stuff.
That's funny.
I look where I'm not supposed to look. I know the magic tricks, right? So I know where the trick is.
The periphery.
And so I'm always
background.
looking, and I was in Kenya, as you mentioned, and so I spent a lot of time on airplanes over the past 2 weeks, and I watched a lot of movies while I was just on the plane for 10 hours at a stretch, and I'm always looking at the wrong place because I know where to look and I'd always see the flaws. But yeah, but it's the same thing with AI. I can see it immediately. I'm editing a piece right now, and I could tell at the beginning that she used AI. Once it got into her story, she didn't. It went away almost instantly. And I was like, okay, you wrote all of this. AI wrote all of this. And I pointed out every single time. I was like, this sounds like AI. Every single time. And then when it got into the meat, I was like, hey, you wrote all of this. This is actually flowing like a human being.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so AI I tell people, use AI. It's a great tool. But if you want content that actually is not content, that is actually something of value, you can't use it. And people will always be like, but AI is getting better. It's getting better. It's getting better. It's like, yes, but at a certain point, it's not going to, at this point where it is not going to make a quantum leap in how much better it's going to get. It's just not. And yes, it's going to get better, but you as a user are not going to get better. And the AI is always going to be pulling from you. And so whatever you're giving it as the base is what it's going to run with.
Good distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Stephen, what when as business owners come to you and they're trying to budget out, if they're wanting to write a book for whatever purpose they have, right? What should they budget for your services roughly? Like what's a range?
Normally it's between about 25 and 50,000.
Okay.
And that covers all of it. Like I wanted to be turnkey. I didn't want to be, nickel and diming. So it's like all of our packages include all the way through. It's getting published on Amazon. You're getting your entity. The book's going to arrive on your desk, your paper book, your ebook, all of that stuff. But that's generally where things fall. We have some where, depending on how far into their book they are, where it's less. Like we have a $10,000 package that's for somebody who's more or less done, but needs all of the rest of the stuff. But for somebody who's starting from scratch, usually it's between 25 and 50. And once we get locked in what they need, that's where it stays. I've never had a single client go over what it was that what they did. Or what they signed up for, where it was like, oh, you need a whole bunch of extra work. That's not usually how it goes. And that's the great thing, is that with the clients that I work with, they trust my expertise. And so I don't generally have a lot of pushback. When I say, hey, in my professional opinion, this is what's going to work, they generally accept it, which is wonderful, because it's like, it's like going to a mechanic that you trust and they say, hey, this is going to be expensive, but it's also going to do this, this, and this for you. And you think about it and you go, okay, well, I trust you. And so just do it. That's kind of the relationship that I like to have with my clients, where they understand that I'm going to let them do at the end of the day whatever they want. If they want to replace their alternator because it needs to be replaced, then I'll do it and it's going to be awesome. But if they don't want to do that, I'm not going to force them to do it. So in the book is the same way, where it's like, hey, I will always tell you, from my opinion, where I'm standing, this is a bad idea. Having this story in this book is not going to serve the book, period. But I will put it in there if that's what you want. And if that's what they want, they don't. But I have never, if I say that, they're generally like, oh, really? And I was like, yes. And here's why. And I'll tell them. Like I had a client where the book was done. We were working on the audiobook, and she was giving me background, and it was because we had touched on there had been some marital issues, but it wasn't a part of that book. And so she went into this big long thing, and I was like, we're not adding that.
It was a detractor almost.
Yeah, I was like, it is going to weaken the book, not strengthen it. This is another book. And I think you should write that book with your husband and go through this whole experience, because that could be hugely powerful. But if we add it to this book, all it does is make the book worse. And then she accepted that. And she was like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way. And I was like, yeah. So I'll always give them a reason. I'm not just going to be like, don't do that. I'm going to give them a reason so that they understand, because I like to be clear and I like them to know where we're going. But I'm always going to allow them to make the final decision at the end of the day. But I will tell them what's what.
Good counseling.
Well, this has been fun. If people want to reach out to you and learn more about, how to engage and, how to write their own book, or why they should write their own book, how do they reach out to you?
You can link with me on LinkedIn. I love talking to people. My website is superhuman.com, spelled like my last name, Heumann. Or just shoot me an email at steve@superhuman.com, and let's set up a meeting. Like, if you're thinking about it, if you're feeling drawn toward it, if you want to have the benefits that a book brings to the business and all those things, if you want to know what those are, like some people just don't know. If you want to learn what ghostwrite, like what the process looks like, let's just jump on a call, man, and let's talk about it. Let's find out where you're at. Let's find out what your purpose is, why you want to do it, what impacts you want to have, and let's take you there. Because that's what I do, is I get you to the point where you have the single most powerful tool for your business and for your brand and for all those things that can possibly exist. Like Forbes did a study year before last, I want to say, where they found that a book was the most powerful business tool that existed.
Oh, wow.
When it came to branding, when it came to marketing, when it came to what's the word? But just like being known,
Impact.
as the expert. Yeah, the ability for people to trust you, all of that stuff. And so it's like when I say that I can get you that tool, I'm being 100% honest. But yeah, it is an investment in the business. Like, you're not going to spend $5,000 and get anything that works. There's one, he was like, oh, I went to this ghostwriting thing, and they said they do my book for $3,000. And I was like, okay, describe that to me. And he described it. It's like, oh, so basically they're doing a 1-hour interview with you, and then they're publishing a transcript of that interview. I'll do that for $3,000, because that's nothing. That's like 3 hours of work. I was like, you're going to have a really horrible book. And when people open it up, why would they ever do business with you? And that's the thing. It's like the same thing with AI. If you want to have AI write your book, great. You're still going to have to pay me to publish it and edit it. And that's totally fine. More than willing to do that. But why would you create something that is going to make your audience question why they would ever do business with you?
Good point.
Yeah, why would you do that?
Good point.
Why give them something that is going to put you in a place of lesser authority because it was obviously written by AI? Why do it at all at that point? Why post on LinkedIn if you're having an AI do it? Because then there's no connection. If I can tell that it was written by AI, well, I'm skipping you right away.
Have you unfollowed anybody that you know?
No, I don't. But like I was actually talking to someone while I was in Kenya.
What were you doing there, by the way?
I was with Habitat for Humanity. So we still have a film. We still have a film aspect to our business. I still do that. And so I was actually filming with Habitat for Humanity. We were building a home.
That's cool.
That is
and
cool.
so I was filming the entire week, and it was a wonderful experience. But we were talking about AI, and someone mentioned that they were using AI to write their son letters. And their son wrote back and was like, "Dad, I do not want your AI written letters."
Ouch.
And he said, "Well,
That hurts.
He said, "But the AI writes it better than me." And he's like, "I don't care. I can tell that it's not you. I don't want to read a letter that isn't my dad. I don't care how well written it is." And that hit me, and I realized I was like,
That's
"This
powerful.
this is what we're getting, where AI is becoming so ubiquitous, and it's a wonderful tool. I absolutely love it, but we need to understand whether we are content or whether we are something more than content. And if we want to be something more, then we don't use AI in that way."
Interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for being on the show. This has been really helpful.
I appreciate it, Jake, AJ. This has been a pleasure.
Thanks for joining us. Good luck with everything. And, for those that want to know more, go check you out on LinkedIn and your website.
Yeah.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you, guys.